What is Tibet really like? Is it just a frozen land at the top of the world, or something far more mysterious? When most people hear the name Tibet, they imagine monks in red robes, silent monasteries, and endless mountains covered in snow. But what if I told you that's only the surface? Imagine standing at nearly 5,000 meters above sea level, where the air is so thin that every breath feels earned. Where the sky feels closer than the earth beneath your feet. This is not just geography, it's a world above the world, often called the roof of the world because of its vast high-altitude plateau surrounded by the mighty Himalayas. But Tibet is not defined by its height, it is defined by its silence. A silence so deep that it forces you to confront your own thoughts. A land where isolation was once so complete that it developed its own unique identity, its own language, its own beliefs, its own way of understanding existence. Why did this place choose isolation when the rest of the world chased expansion? Why did a civilization build its life around spirituality instead of power? And how did people survive and even thrive in one of the harshest environments on Earth? This is not just a journey into a place. This is a journey into a mindset. Because Tibet is not what you've been told. It is not just mountains, not just monks, not just mystery. It is something deeper. And once you begin to understand it, you might start questioning the world you live in. To understand Tibet, you have to forget everything you think you know about civilization. Because Tibet does not follow the rules of the modern world, it rewrites them. This is a land where survival was never guaranteed. The climate is cold, dry, and unforgiving. Oxygen levels are low, agriculture is limited, and vast regions remain empty and untouched. Yet somehow, in this extreme environment, a civilization didn't just survive, it evolved into something profoundly unique. For centuries, Tibet remained largely isolated from the rest of the world. There were no major trade networks shaping its identity, no constant invasions redefining its culture. Instead, it turned inward. While other societies built empires through conquest, Tibet built an empire of thought, centered around philosophy, spirituality, and the nature of the human mind. At the heart of this transformation was Tibetan Buddhism, not just as a religion, but as a complete way of life. It influenced art, education, politics, and even daily routines. Monasteries became more than places of worship. They became centers of learning, debate, and psychological exploration. But Tibet is not just spiritual, it is also deeply practical. In a land where nature is harsh, survival requires intelligence, adaptability, and resilience. Every tradition, every system, every belief evolved as a response to the environment. So the real question is not, what is Tibet? The real question is, how did a civilization, isolated at the top of the world, create a way of life that is still studied, admired, and questioned today? Because Tibet is not just a place on a map. It is a different answer to the question of how life should be lived. The story of Tibet begins not in silence, but in power. Long before it became known for spirituality, Tibet was once a formidable empire that shaped the politics of Central Asia. In the 7th century, under the rule of Songtsen Gampo, Tibet unified as a strong kingdom and expanded its influence across neighboring regions. This period marked the beginning of cultural transformation as Buddhism was introduced and gradually woven into the fabric of Tibetan life. Over the centuries, Tibet transitioned from a militaristic empire to a deeply spiritual society. By the time of the Yarlung dynasty, monasteries began to rise as centers of influence, not just religiously, but politically as well. Power slowly shifted from kings to religious leaders, creating a unique system where governance and spirituality became intertwined. One of the most defining aspects of Tibetan history is its long-standing tradition of leadership under the Dalai Lama. This system combined spiritual authority with political responsibility, making Tibet unlike most other civilizations. Tibet's history has also been shaped by periods of interaction and tension with neighboring powers, particularly China and Mongol empires. Despite these influences, Tibet managed to preserve a strong sense of identity, culture, and independence for centuries. Throughout its past, Tibet has constantly transformed, shifting from empire to monastery-centered society, from political power to spiritual depth. Yet, through all these changes, one thing remained constant: a civilization determined to define itself on its own terms. The land of Tibet is unlike anywhere else on Earth. Known as the roof of the world, it sits on the vast Tibetan Plateau, the highest and largest plateau on the planet. This elevated landscape stretches across thousands of kilometers, creating a world where the sky feels closer and the horizon seems endless. Surrounded by some of the most powerful mountain ranges on Earth, including the Himalayas, Tibet is naturally enclosed, almost like a fortress created by nature itself. These towering peaks not only define its borders, but also shape its climate, blocking moisture and creating a cold, dry environment across much of the region. Rivers that sustain millions of people across Asia actually originate here. Major waterways like the Brahmaputra River and Indus River begin their journey in the glaciers and highlands of Tibet, making it one of the most important water sources in the world. The terrain itself is incredibly diverse, ranging from snow-covered mountains and vast grasslands to deep valleys and frozen lakes. However, much of the land remains difficult to inhabit due to its altitude and extreme conditions. This geography is not just a backdrop, it defines life in Tibet. The thin air, limited vegetation, and isolation have all influenced how people live, travel, and build their communities. In Tibet, nature is not something to conquer, it is something to understand, respect, and adapt to. Because here, the land always sets the rules. Life in Tibet is not simply lived, it is endured, adapted to, and mastered over generations. Survival here demands a deep understanding of nature, because every aspect of daily life is shaped by altitude, climate, and limited resources. At such high elevations, even breathing becomes a challenge. The air contains significantly less oxygen, forcing the human body to adapt over time. Indigenous Tibetans have developed unique physiological traits, stronger lung capacity, and efficient oxygen usage that allow them to function where most outsiders struggle. Food is another key part of survival. Agriculture is limited, so people rely heavily on hardy crops like barley, which is used to make sampa, a staple food that is both nutritious and easy to prepare. Yak herding also plays a central role in life. The yak provides milk, butter, meat, wool, and even fuel through dried dung, making it one of the most important animals in Tibetan culture. Homes are built with survival in mind. Thick stone walls help retain heat, while small windows minimize exposure to the cold winds. Every design choice reflects centuries of learning how to live in such an unforgiving environment. Water, too, must be carefully managed. In many areas, people rely on glacial streams or melted snow, often traveling long distances to collect it. Nothing is wasted because scarcity is a constant reality. But survival in Tibet is not only physical, it is mental. Life in such isolation requires resilience, patience, and discipline. Communities depend on cooperation, sharing resources, and supporting one another through harsh conditions. In Tibet, survival is not about controlling nature. It is about living in harmony with it, understanding its limits, and respecting its power. Winter in Tibet transforms the landscape into a world of extremes. Temperatures drop far below freezing, and icy winds sweep across the plateau with relentless force. Entire regions can become isolated as snow covers paths and makes travel nearly impossible. During this season, daily life slows down, but it never stops. Families gather indoors, relying on stored food and fuel collected during the warmer months. Yak butter lamps and stoves become essential sources of warmth, while thick clothing made from wool and fur protects against the biting cold. Water sources often freeze, making access even more difficult. In some areas, people must break ice or melt snow just to meet their basic needs. Livestock also require extra care, as animals must be protected from freezing temperatures and food shortages. Despite these challenges, winter is also a time of quiet strength. It tests endurance, patience, and preparation. For the people of Tibet, surviving winter is not just a seasonal struggle. It is a way of life that reinforces resilience and deep respect for the natural world. The culture of Tibet is a rich blend of tradition, community, and deep-rooted values that have been preserved for centuries. Unlike fast-changing modern societies, Tibetan culture moves with a slower rhythm, one that is closely tied to nature, spirituality, and collective life. At the center of Tibetan culture is a strong sense of community. Families, villages, and monasteries are deeply interconnected, where cooperation and mutual support are essential for survival. Daily life is not just about individual progress, but about maintaining harmony within the group. Festivals, gatherings, and shared rituals play a major role in strengthening these bonds. Art and expression in Tibet are deeply symbolic. From colorful thangka paintings to intricate sand mandalas, every form of art carries spiritual meaning. Music, chants, and traditional dances are not just performances. They are ways of preserving history, beliefs, and identity. Even clothing reflects culture, with traditional garments designed for both functionality and beauty, often adapted to the cold climate. Hospitality is also a key cultural value. Visitors are often welcomed with warmth and offered food or butter tea, reflecting a tradition of generosity even in a land where resources are limited. In Tibet, culture is not something separate from life. It is life itself. It is seen in how people speak, work, celebrate, and connect with one another. It is a living tradition that continues to guide daily existence, even in the face of change. Religion is at the heart of life in Tibet, shaping not only beliefs, but also daily routines and social structures. The dominant spiritual tradition is Tibetan Buddhism, a unique form of Buddhism that blends philosophical teachings with rituals, meditation, and symbolic practices. Monasteries serve as centers of learning, prayer, and community life. Monks dedicate years to studying scriptures, debating philosophical ideas, and practicing meditation techniques aimed at understanding the nature of the mind and reality. Prayer wheels, chants, and mantras are commonly used as ways to cultivate focus and spiritual awareness. Religion in Tibet is not limited to monasteries. It is woven into everyday life. People often begin their day with prayers, visit sacred sites, and carry spiritual symbols for protection and guidance. Even simple actions are influenced by religious values, such as compassion, patience, and mindfulness. This deep connection to spirituality provides a sense of purpose and stability, especially in a challenging environment. It helps individuals cope with hardship and encourages a way of life centered on inner peace rather than material gain. Tibet is home to some of the most sacred places in the world, where spirituality and nature come together. One of the most revered is Mount Kailash, considered holy by multiple religions and believed to be a center of spiritual energy. Another important site is the Potala Palace in Lhasa, once the residence of the Dalai Lama and a symbol of Tibetan identity. Pilgrims often travel long distances, sometimes on foot, to visit these sacred places. For them, the journey itself is an act of devotion, reflecting faith, endurance, and a deep spiritual connection. In the end, Tibet cannot be reduced to a single idea, image, or narrative. It is not just a land shaped by altitude or tradition. It is a reflection of a completely different way of understanding life. While much of the world measures progress through speed, expansion, and material success, Tibet offers a quieter perspective, one that values awareness, balance, and inner strength. What makes Tibet truly remarkable is not just how people survive there, but how they interpret existence itself. In a place where limitations are constant, meaning is not found in abundance, but in clarity. Every aspect of life, whether it is work, learning, or interaction, carries a sense of intention. Tibet challenges a simple but powerful idea. What if fulfillment does not come from having more, but from needing less? What if the strength of a society lies not in what it builds outwardly, but in how deeply it understands itself? This is what Tibet ultimately represents, a different answer to life's biggest questions. Not louder, not faster, but deeper. And perhaps in understanding that, we begin to see our own world a little differently. As the wind moves across the high plateau and the sky slowly fills with stars, Tibet returns to what it has always been: silent, vast, and timeless. There are no loud endings here, no dramatic conclusions, just a feeling that something within you has shifted. Maybe it's the realization that life doesn't always have to be rushed. Maybe it's the understanding that meaning can exist even in the simplest moments. Or maybe it's just the quiet question that now lingers in your mind. Somewhere in a distant monastery, a monk continues his practice, not for recognition, not for achievement, but for understanding. And that, perhaps, is the essence of Tibet. It doesn't try to convince you, it doesn't try to impress you, it simply exists and invites you to look deeper. Because long after the journey ends, Tibet doesn't leave you, it stays in your thoughts, in your questions, and in the way you begin to see the world around you. If this journey into Tibet made you see the world from a new perspective, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Tell us in the comments, what part of Tibet surprised you the most? And what other hidden civilizations or mysterious places would you like to explore next? Your support helps us bring more deep, cinematic stories from the world's most fascinating regions. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next journey, because the next story might take you somewhere even more unexpected.